So first of all, I would like to thank TEDxEmory for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you. And thank you, Kathy, for her wonderful presentation just now. So one day, on a typical day at the gym in Hong Kong, I was flexing my muscles in between sets of my training, talking to my gym bros about how many calories we eat in our diets, what kind of poo-poo movements we do, and bragging about the new muscles on my back by walking like a bodybuilder does. My confidence and muscularity at the gym often have people mistaking me as a man. And to be honest, in the social setting, I did not mind to be seen as a man. But bodybuilders who knew me knew that I was assigned female at birth, and I enjoyed competing as a woman bodybuilder. As a trans and non-binary athlete who sees my gender as neither male nor female, the gym is as intimate as home and as intimidating as any other gender-segregated spaces. Even though I was super confident at the gym, the changing room was a pain in my ass. Like many other trans people who struggle using the restrooms in order to avoid stigma, violence, or embarrassment, I too try to minimize the number of times I had to use the female changing room. Whenever I need to step in the female changing room, I would make myself look smaller by shrinking myself as much as I could. And trust me, I had done Google search on how to look smaller, but none of those tips actually worked for me. So I figured out that maybe if I took off my tank tops, not to show off my physique, but to show that I actually wore a sports bra, women in the changing room might recognize that I was a woman before they screamed at me or accusing me of looking like a man. You may ask, did that work? Well, most of the time, it didn't. So I employed another strategy, this time a strategy of staring. Instead of speaking up for myself, as I knew my rather low voice would actually cause more confusion, I tried as hard as I could to stare with an angry face, hoping that I could scare some of these women away. So I stared back when women sized me up to locate my femininity. I stared back when women coming towards me and started to explain that this is a women changing room. And I stared even more fiercely when women knew that I was a woman and tried to make fun of my voiceless anger. I was embarrassed. I developed its hypersensitivity whenever I had to step into the female changing room, as I could feel the annoyance and disgust from women who shared the same space with me. I felt powerless and was filled with hatred and self-pity within me. I wanted change, but I did not know what to do. Until a woman stepped into the changing room and showed me a way out. On this particular day, like many other days at the gym in Hong Kong, I had just finished my workout, had done my shower, and was changing in the female changing room. Women in the changing room would often look at me briefly, then went out to look at the stick figure on the door, and sometimes they came back in and asked if I entered the wrong changing room. Sometimes they never came back. And that was exactly what Christine did. But first, let me tell you more about Christine. Christine was a middle-aged woman. She was a small, stature, fit woman. But unlike most women, she lifted heavy and fierce. She seemed to get along with the big boys at the gym and had a rather carefree attitude towards everybody. And a week ago, I met her in the changing room. And like many others, She looked at me briefly, went out to look at the stick figure on the door, and never came back. And so I was well prepared for the moment she came into the changing room again. This time, I had my phone ready with my competition photos where I wore my bikini with beautiful makeup, hair, and jewelries, so that I could have something to prove to her that I was a woman if I had to confront her. I was also in full gear, my stairs, just in case. So I turned my back against the locker door, hoping that she would not notice me. But of course, it failed when Christine tapped my shoulder. Instead of accusing me of looking like a man or giving me a dirty look, she asked a bizarre question. She said that lightheartedly. "Is it hard for you to find a boyfriend? Can I introduce my son to you?" Well, in Hong Kong, even though it is an international city, it is still a thing for parents to arrange blind dates for their children. But more often than not, it came from a rather friendly and joking gesture rather than forcing one to get married. And so Christine's bizarre question, coming from her half-concerned, half-joking tone, was in fact an act of kindness that completely changed my perspective in dealing with this unkind world. To soften my often intense, defensive heart, she initiated a dialogue mixed with humor and compassion. And so Christine and I looked at each other and we burst out laughing. We both knew that it was a joke and we started to talk. She told me that she was a single working mother with 2 jobs and still managed to train at the gym 4 times a week. She told me that men would often advise her not to lift heavy because that would make her manly. She told me that people often question of her ability to manage work, doing what she loved, and taking care of her son. And she told me about the joy of gaining her first muscles by training hard. Like many others, when she first saw me, she thought I was a man. But later, she realized that we were pretty much the same. We both were trying to defy the notion of femininity by embracing our muscularity without shame. And so she plotted this encounter so that she could encourage me to stand my ground and be unapologetically myself. This deliberate encounter initiated by Christine was one of the very first kind gestures I received from a stranger in one of the most hostile gender-sacred spaces in the world, the changing room. Trans people in Hong Kong and elsewhere in the world face similar challenges in accessing restrooms that match with their gender identity. Large commercial gyms in Hong Kong, for instance, have banned trans users in using the changing room that is aligned with their gender. Until more recently, a group of trans-masculine gym users struck back and forced one of the gym brands in Hong Kong to allow trans people on a case-by-case basis to use the male changing rooms even without a legal gender change. Currently, in America, more than 18 states have implemented the bathroom bill and the trans athlete bans to prohibit trans and non-binary people from using the restrooms and competing in the gender category that they identify themselves as. On a daily basis, trans and gender non-conforming people, like myself, struggle to find a peaceful place where we can just pee, shit, shower, and change for a few minutes without exposing to verbal or physical violence in this hostile world. We have to admit that, sadly, our world has become more and more unkind to people who are different. Our society fails to teach us how to face hostility, bigotry, and violence. And so we develop hatred and anger as defense mechanism, hoping that this could regain some of the powerlessness that is being stripped away from us. But hatred and anger offer little help in resolving the conflicts I have to deal with at the changing room daily, let alone changing the world. So when I asked Christine how she could handle the judgment of others for being herself, she said, "Be kind to yourself and to others. Hate does not drive out hate. Only kindness can do that." Sounds a bit cliched, isn't it? "That's it, being kind?" I asked her. And so she added, "Being kind to yourself is not some forced positivity that you read in your self-help books. It is not about positive affirmations or meditating 3 times a day. It is rather about making room in your hearts by facing your own vulnerabilities and by fully accepting who you are. And it is a choice that we do every day to recognize that we are all interconnected in some ways. We are all different, but also the same." And so Christine's tenderness did not only develop the friendship between us, but also drove out the hatred and self-pity within me. With her kindness, I was able to be kind to those who didn't seem to be nice to me at first, often with a sense of humor to soften the stiffened hearts shaped by a rigid binary worldviews. And with her kindness, I was able to exert my strength and kindness to others. As such, I started the training workshops in 2019 for trans and non-binary folks so that they could have an affordable, safe space to work out in Hong Kong. Together, we built a fitness community where we can share knowledge and skills in staying healthy. Together, we respect each other's journey and deeply care for each other. And together, we build strength around kindness and strategies to overcome stigmas. And as a professional athlete who has faced numerous stigmas within the sports community, I was also committed to making better changes in organizing our sports competition. As an ambassador of Gay Games Hong Kong, a global diversity festival of sports, arts, and culture events, trans activists and I advocated for a gender inclusion policy so that everyone, regardless of their desire about transition and their legal gender status, are able to compete in the gender category that they feel most aligned with. Gay Games Hong Kong, which will be held in November later this year, will be one of the very first international sports events that offer an inclusive space for all genders to experience the joy of sport. You may still wonder, did Christine really introduce her son to me? Yes, I did train her son, but no, we didn't develop anything romantic. But what Christine had introduced to me was more than just a potential romantic relationship. She had introduced to me a world where hate does not need to react with hate, a world where kindness could become a strength instead of a weakness. And we can all be kind to ourselves and to others, as a gentle tapping of the shoulder, a warm smile, a hug, and a sense of humor can make the world just a little bit kinder. Thank you.